Hi everyone, this is Apolonia Rockwell. We have a different type of episode for you. David, you had an amazing idea of actually interviewing me for the first time. And so that's what we're going to do today. And there's a set of questions and I don't want to look at them because I think probably just freestyle will be the best. So, but yeah, I'm excited.
Me too. Hi everyone, I'm David. I'll be asking the questions. Today we're going to be interviewing Apolonia, seeing,
This is crazy.
Getting some context on the boss, on the founder. So yeah, if you want to start there, just kind of the very beginning, the story that kind of kickstarted your safety passion.
Okay.
As growing up in the oil field, can you shed some light on that stuff?
On how it all started.
How it all
Okay.
started.
So I know that's so crazy not being the interviewer. I want to ask you a bunch of questions. But okay, so my dad, Brody Hansen, so he worked in the oil and gas industry from the time, I don't know, from at least from what I can remember, I was like 3 years old. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what oil and gas, and I just knew he was gone half my life. Because when you work in the oil and gas industry, a lot of the times you work like hitch schedule, so 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. But also during that time, oil and gas wasn't, from my understanding, it wasn't super popular in Colorado, so he would travel a lot. And so it wasn't always 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. He was just gone a lot. That's what I knew. Okay. And so my first memory, it was my first funeral. So my first memory of this type of experience was I was in the third grade and I had a friend, and I lived in Platteville, Colorado. If any of you guys know where that's at, you guys have empathy for me. So I had this friend, Amador, and our dads worked together. His dad was Marty. His dad was named Marty. And so our dads worked together, and they were just the coolest guys ever. Like
Awesome.
My dad would always take me fishing. They would be the guys that would come in, you know, they did, what is it called? They would chaperone,
Yeah.
what are those, where you go out and just take little field trips? They would chaperone field trips.
Okay.
And so they would be the cool dads that would come in that just, from my memory, looking at it now, they just look like rock stars, like cut off t-shirts, mullets, dirty jeans, like steel-toed boots, like jeans tucked in the boots. Like they were just the coolest guys ever, and charismatic, just the cool dads. And what was interesting was we would spend time outside of school. You know, I would spend time with Marty's family, and I'll just never forget this day where my dad sat me down and told me that Marty wasn't coming home.
Oof. And
in the third grade, I didn't understand really what he was talking about, and he just said that Marty had died on the job. Wow. And I mean, that was my first funeral. It was open casket. He was working on a drilling rig here in Colorado, and it was a fall from height, so we fell. And Oof. It was just this experience. It's one of my earliest memories, just vividly remembering the funeral, the emotions, Amador and his mom, like just his mom and his sisters at that funeral. It's just crystal clear to me. It's just something that I remember. And so, yes, that day, but then life goes on, right? And so it's the aftermath. It's not so much the incident, but it's the aftermath for the family. And now Amador, we're in the third grade, we're growing up. There's still field trips, there's still birthdays, there's Sure. significant milestones that your dad isn't there for. And as life goes on year after year after year, we're in middle school now, in high school, and it's like Marty's still not here because of something that happened at work. And that had always stuck with me. And that's when I knew not much about, I knew I'm going to be a safety person. That's not. It was, I knew that my dad could go to work and not come home. Like my dad, I wanted his time. Like, I wanted his attention. He was gone a lot. I wanted to be a part of something that was important to him, and that was work. And he loved work. Like, there was in my house, there was never any complaints about work from my mom, dad. I mean, they just embraced, now looking at it, like the hustle and extreme work ethic. I feel that I'm so blessed. My dad and I didn't really get along. I mean, even though he was gone a lot, it was hard because once he was here, he's trying to be the boss of me, and I'm like, what? So, I mean, it's not like we just had this perfect relationship either, but I mean, I just wanted to be a part of something that was important to him. So then fast forwarding to high school, then college, as soon as I graduated high school, I started, it was it was in maybe my senior year in high school, started interviewing for jobs in the oil and gas industry that were local. And I ended up getting a job. I'm going to school simultaneously and working. And I landed a job at C&H Excavation. My first boss was Cliff Simpson. Okay. And if you know Cliff Simpson, oh my gosh, share this with him. No, I love him. But he was my first oil and gas, and I had worked in high school, but this was my first big girl job. I'm working for an oil and gas company. We had a roustabout division, trucking division, a tank setup division. It was a separate entity that got sold, MWS tanks. But so I go to this company, I interview. They're looking for somebody that's in safety. Cliff hires me, gives me the opportunity, and I sit down with Cliff, and he's like this big guy. Like, he's like this big, typical, just intimidating guy. And I'm like, but he's a teddy bear. But I'm like, okay, so what am I supposed to be doing? I think I'm like week 2. I'm safety. I'm brand new. I knew that I wanted to be a part of something that my dad had always, it was a big part of his life. So I wanted to be in oil and gas too. And I wanted to be in safety. And I'm like, okay, Cliff, like, what am I supposed to be doing? And I'll never forget. He leaned over on the table, and he was like, Apolonia, figure it the fuck out. And I was like, what? And I'm like in tears. I'm like, okay. Like, I'm not in the meeting, but I go to my mom, and I'm like, Mom, I don't know if this is the right choice. And she's like, you better figure it out, and you better stick it out. And I'm like, okay. And and he had those conversations with me. I mean, I'm like month in, it didn't click with me right away. Months in, I'm like, how am I doing? And same situation. He's like, you are a fucking babysitting job. Like, you need to do more, be more, he was the best boss I've ever had. Like, he just pushed me, and I'm just so grateful for him. I still,
cool.
Yes, I still work with Cliff, but he was tough on me. But what I realized and what I knew before getting into safety was I knew that it's important. Oil and gas was important to my dad. I wanted to be in that industry. But I knew at that time that safety, my dad, he thought safety was a joke, old school oil field mentality. He was a company man for, 15 years on the drilling side, worked on a drilling rig his whole life, dropped out of high school when he was 17, worked on a rig. And so safety to him, I'm like, Dad, what's safety about? I'm like, is it true you could, what are the biggest hazards on a drilling rig? And it was just like, you have these safety assholes come out that pretend that they know what they're looking at, or they're looking at their OSHA book, and it doesn't line up with reality. And that's also something, thinking about it, talking about it out loud, that's something Cliff really believed in too, was that he knew that safety was important, same as my dad. But they just had this perception that safety was just this outside division. We hate them. Safety sucks. And Cliff would always tell me, I need it to be practical, Apolonia. I get that you're going to school for occupational health and safety, and that's awesome. Yeah, so I ended up getting my bachelor's in occupational health and safety. I'm doing that full time, working for Cliff full time.
Busy.
Yeah, it was crazy. But, and actually it was my first semester I was in Black Hills State University. Okay. My husband, now we were dating, but Jordan Rockwell, he played basketball up there. So when we came back, my first semester, he was already in college, is when I started working with Cliff. But anyways, so he was always ingraining in me that safety needs to be practical and you need to figure out what that is, Apolonia. And I'm like, okay. So everyone hates safety. It's needed. People are dying on the job. My dad not just Marty, I mean, he's had other friends that have had significant injuries, losing a hand, losing a finger, being ran out. I mean, those situations, those are fatalities. But so, I mean, there has been risks. And I'm like, my dad works in this industry. I want to protect him.
Right.
I want to protect the people that he's working with. I want to be a solution. But how do I do that if everyone hates safety? Yeah. And I would bring this up to my dad and Cliff and people that I'm working with. And so what I realized is then I started interviewing safety people. And at that time, safety people I'm like, are you as concerned as I am that, you're hated? And they just had this mentality. They didn't care. Huh. It was, and this is just my truth. I start interviewing safety people and they're like, that was not a concern of them. They didn't have this aha moment that the industry needed to change. I interviewed trainers that use the same OSHA materials for the last 10 years and they're charging per person or per class and they're charging so much money, in my eyes. I'm like, in freshman in college, whatever. I'm like, so companies pay all this money. Instructors don't really care. Well, no wonder why people hate safety. And then I would attend safety classes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I see why you all hate safety people. They're checked out. They don't care. They're using outdated materials. None of them have ever, a lot of them at that time just hadn't, either been on the field or had field experience. So I'm like, okay, I have two options. I could go, I guess I could go work on a rig or I don't have that field experience, but what I can do is I could start talking to the people of the field. I could start talking and building relationships with the drivers, with the guys in the field, and understanding what it is that they struggle with and not sitting in my office and being a safety person. And so I went to the store. I got my first FR little setup, my boots and my little jacket and hoodie and shirt and pants. And so I just spent the majority of my time in the field. And I'd be out there on a rig, or I would be out there doing tank setup and teardowns, and I would watch and see. So before, I'd be at my office and I'd get these slips, trips, and falls, and Johnny strained his back and all these things. Well, I was like, okay, I need to go out and see this for myself and see how these things are happening, so then I can prevent them, but first and foremost, get the story of the people. And what I realized is these people had the most amazing experiences and backgrounds and children and families. And, once they started, I was doing safety meetings with no relationship with anybody, with no understanding of who they were and who their families were. So I saw the dynamic of me standing in front of a safety meeting, talking to a crowd of strangers, versus when I started showing up in the field, understanding who they were as a person, understanding their struggles. And then I was really able to then make an impact once I understood them. My safety meetings changed. I got more engagement. And then, long story short, a company called me. One of their employees had pretty much, how do I say this? That's correct. But he lost some of his fingers. I was going to say he chopped off his hand. It wasn't his entire hand, but a few of his fingers were mangled.
Ouch.
Yeah, And so this company reached out, heard I did safety, asked if I could help with this investigation. I took the gentleman to the hospitals, seeing a grown man cry in a hospital. We're at the emergency room, seeing how much pain he was in. He was from out of state, seeing the pain in him when the doctor is removing his glove, not knowing if his fingers were going to be attached with him or the glove. I mean, it was such a brutal experience. Wow. But I mean, I'm like, this is crazy. So of course, that company that I helped with, they wanted me to do they wanted to hire me. And I said, no, I'm super loyal to Cliff. And Cliff just allowed me to pretty much start my own business at that time.
Okay.
And start consulting for other companies. On my off time, during the weekends, I started teaching classes on the weekends and after hours, things like that. Cliff allowed me to hire my replacement at CNH. He knew I had a bigger purpose to serve other companies, and that's how True Safety began.
Wow.
Yeah, that was
That's
such
awesome.
a long. I swear to you, the other questions will not be that long, but I wanted to give context of how True Safety was born. I knew it was about the people, and I knew that it was being done the wrong way, especially with training. Training needed to be engaged. I'm like, how do I get someone like my dad, the hardest critic, or Cliff? I had the two toughest critics of safety, and I'm like, okay, anything I'm going to bring to the table, if it's a new program with safety or a class or something, it needed to be cool enough and engaging enough, relevant enough, and impactful enough for these two guys. And that's how I started shifting my mindset of engaging classes, field scenarios and safety meetings, getting their input. I'm not the expert. I haven't worked on a rig before. I hadn't worked on the tank crew. I haven't, driven a truck like a lot of the gentlemen. I needed to let them be the experts and them share their stories during training. And it was just a different way I started teaching classes, and my classes on the weekends started, I was like 25, 50 people, 100 people every weekend. And that was in Alt, Colorado. And then moved the office to Greeley once we outgrew that. And then from Greeley, now we're moving offices again and building our own playground training facility, dream place. So yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. So
wow.
That's
crazy.
That's kind of the backstory, and all the other questions I'm sure will kind of be in line with that. But yeah.
So how long has True Safety been officially True Safety? How long has that company existed?
4 years.
Okay.
4, almost 5 years. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I've never heard that backstory before. So
yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And I say 4 to 5 years because I was at CNH simultaneously for, the beginning years. So yeah, it's around that time. It's crazy.
All right. Well, that was like the next section, so you went there before I could ask, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just look. I was gonna ask then. So from working for somebody else, working for an existing oil and gas company to starting your own thing.
Yeah.
I guess maybe backing up a little bit. When I first came here, it was obvious that the entrepreneur side of Apolonia and the start your own thing, and then combined with what you just said, seeing the way safety had been for years.
Yeah.
And how much of a problem, and it's a really deep issue, and so those two things. Why? Can you talk a little bit about the entrepreneur side, starting your own business? How did that get started?
Yeah. So when that company had reached out, I wasn't fearful. I wasn't fearful of taking that leap, if maybe that's what, you were going with that, is I just knew, it was just so clear to me that so many companies had the same problem, that they either had a non-existent safety program and they needed somebody to tell them what that looked like, or they did have a safety program, but it wasn't effective. And by that time that company had reached out to me with the employee with his hands mangled, I had the experience at that time already. I kind of jumped through that. I had experienced building a safety program for CNH. We had built systems and processes and programs, and one of Cliff's companies had sold. So, I just had this experience of building something solid that produced results. And so I had become, looking back at it, a specialist in safety. And I had built something, and that's what companies were coming to me looking for. And so I was brand new in safety, year one, somebody calls me and they're like, can you do this for me? It's like, this was my passion. Like, I knew there was a problem. And it's not like I was this specialist and I was this know-it-all or anything like that. I'm learning every single day, but once I had a program and a system that worked, I was able to replicate that and customize it for every single company that came to me. But of course, I started managing the safety for this company that, the employee had a significant injury, and then working through that with that company, and then building their safety program, and then boom, 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 other companies are like, we need help. And so I was really passionate at that time, helping the little guy, helping the little company build something that was effective, not just safety that got you in compliance, but safety that actually impacted the beliefs of people. And so I think a lot of people, like, my little siblings, like my brother I could tell he wants to start something and do something and has this kind of an entrepreneurial bug. And I've spoke at my sister's school, like the senior class, or at that time the junior class, about entrepreneurship and just kind of the roadmap. And I think I broke it down really simple. Was the advice that I gave to the kids was, go out there and have amazing, incredible work ethic. Go all out and taste different things too. I was fortunate to find something I was passionate about right away. So taste a lot of different things, different industries, find what you're passionate about, but go all in on that thing.
Right.
Cliff he wouldn't have kept me employed if I didn't put in the extra. I mean, I was obsessed with the industry, with what I did, and bettering myself. And so I just, I invested in myself, taking classes online, doing seminars, getting my degree, all these things. So that's the roadmap I gave you, was become an expert in a space. And then from there, I was able to help other companies. So it started as a side hustle, doing things on the weekends and evenings, things like that. And then I was just able to just had the revenue coming in where I was able to hire my first team member, and then next and next and next. And now we're close to 20 team members now, as you know. And I just feel like that's so, we're like big, but we're so small. We talk about all the goals that we have here. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my mindset there, was just wanting to make an impact on the world. It's just always been my mindset, not just what can I do here in Colorado? How can we take this to another level and impact companies all over the place? And that's why we have online programs now and online OSHA training. And I knew that it's always been bigger than me. So what I mean by that is I knew that this was never going to be a one-man show. I never wanted to be the one-man person. I'm not the know-it-all. I'm the best safety person in the world. I knew that I needed to build a team that of guys and girls that have field experience. Since I'm not the person that has had 20 years experience on a drilling rig, or 5 or 10, I knew that the most impactful classes, and just in my mind at that time, were going to be from people that had worked on a rig or had driven a truck, or if they're teaching, class, defensive driving class. I'm like, okay, if I'm taking a defensive driving class, or if I'm taking a confined space class or a fire prevention class, I want to talk to the expert. Right. That just made sense in my brain.
Yeah, why not?
So those are the coolest, funnest classes, is a fire prevention class from a firefighter or an EMT or a paramedic, and they're like, this is what happened when somebody went down. This is what CPR actually looks like, not what the book says. Right. But when I'm giving, that was one of our first hires, was an EMT paramedic firefighter.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and I was super stoked, because I was like, I'm a cool trainer. People love me. I'm charismatic. I'm fun. But I just didn't have the ego. I was like, and I still, Matt Fall, I still work with him to this day. But he was the EMT or, paramedic, firefighter, and I saw him shine and share his stories, and they were better than my stories. So I think it's about too, when you're building a company, if that's your goal, if that's the path that you're wanting to take, is just remembering that to not have an ego. If you want to build a business, I mean, this is just my truth. Not everyone wants to do this, but I just knew that there were people better than me, and that's who I wanted to surround myself with. So then Matt had this, EMT background, and people loved him on the safety side too, because they just liked that type of experience. But then I brought on people that had oil and gas experience, and I saw the guys in the field, our customers, gravitate towards them because they had been there, done that, knew the lingo, and the trust was there. Because if we're doing a drilling rig audit, I'm super insightful. I know the OSHA regulations, but I just knew that somebody that worked on a rig, if we could get them the safety background, and I invested in those people, send them to OSHA training, give them the safety tools, that would be a super impactful safety person. So that's
strong credibility.
It's strong credibility, yeah. So that's how I started building the team, built the administrative team. I also knew when we were at 5 or less employees, I knew that marketing was important. And so we hired somebody, as you know, to take on marketing and social media, having a social media presence. None of my competitors at that time, I was just the small fry. I was like this young girl, and I don't think people took me serious as far as like outside competitors, but I was serious, and I was serious about growing the team and social media marketing. And now we've far surpassed the competition in Colorado. There's, still some people that we work with and collaborate with, but I just knew 5 years ago that social media was important. And so we just started getting that brand recognition. None of my competitors use Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn as much as we did. And then I think because of that, people knew of us, and they loved our classes, our engagement. They love our field experienced team. And that was something that wasn't being done at the time. And just having that philosophy of doing safety different, people just loved that. And so we went all in. And that's where we're at.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're listening and haven't seen our stuff, check out True Safety on social media. A shameless plug for ourselves.
Yes, and awesome videos are made by David. They're awesome.
Oh, thanks. Okay, so now future goals. You've got True Safety that's been around for 4 years. What are you planning to do? What's like the vision? What's the goal? Where's True Safety headed?
This gets me so excited.
Exactly.
I know. There's so much. I think a lot of people ask, how can we, I get this question a lot of just how can we have these big goals and not get down if we don't accomplish them right away. And I just don't think like that. We have really big goals. We want to hit 10 million this year. And I know that for a lot of people, that's like nothing. That's like shrimp. That's like baby company. Like, oh, how cute. They want to make 10 million. That's so adorable. But that's just our personal goal. We'll have this podcast we could listen to 5 years from now and be like, wow, 10 million. That was teeny. But so we want to hit 10 million this year. But the big goal is going back to a little bit to what I said in the past, is to serve companies all around the world. We want to dive more into our online OSHA training. We want to expand our course library. So we have interactive OSHA classes, but I want to add more interactive classes on that platform, not just in oil and gas, but in construction and for the medical field. But, we can't physically teach and serve the amount of people that I want to impact. So I'm like, online is the future. And so we're never going to not teach our on-site classes, but I just want to also simultaneously get them online. So that's one huge goal. And then the other one is having an EHS platform, so an environmental health and safety, a safety platform. My goal is that and this is the future. I mean, every company is going to have a program where they're logging in to see their safety program. They're going to have a software or a portal where you're logging in, you can see your entire safety program. Because I know that, because that's a need for me. I'm a safety professional. Like, that's what I want for my clients,
right.
is for them to see their HSE manual, their near misses are tracked and trended, their observations or stop works. It's a tracking system. So this big platform, and these are just tools. I mean, the online OSHA training is awesome. The EHS software, these are softwares. That's the future. These are tools, but I just, even beyond that, and beyond all of that, is just making an impact on people. And what that personally means for me is, I just know, since I have family in the oil field, I'm invested in the people in the field, I'm so interested and I'm obsessed with culture. And whether that's here, the culture at True Safety, or when we get a new client, and we get clients that have over 400 employees, and we work with small companies that are just brand new startups. But I'm obsessed with culture, and I'm obsessed with figuring out, because safety to me is a result of good culture.
Sure.
So safety is, to me, it's a belief. There's no safety policy procedure that is going to make someone be safe. Okay. So you can't throw a book at someone and be like, be safe. Like, that makes nothing to somebody.
Right.
You can have all the policies and procedures and paperwork in the world. But what I'm obsessed with finding out with, and will always be obsessed with, is just how can we impact the belief of that individual. Because what's bigger than safety is culture. And how do you create culture? Culture is just simply a common belief system. So when you have a culture, a tribe or whatever, those individuals, a good culture, I should say, I should say a good culture, they all have the same belief system. They're believing in one thing. And so that's what I'm interested in, that mission.
Yeah.
You know, the software, the tools, like, that's exciting, that's cool, it's the future, but it's how do you move somebody, how do you shift somebody that truly, truly makes somebody think different of, do I take this shortcut or not? Do I put my safety glasses on or not? Do I do the right lockout, tagout procedure here or not? Because my husband works in oil and gas, and, you know, and so I think of him too as somebody that, you know, he's this cool guy, like, he's, you know, everyone, I don't know, he's like the man, like, he's the guy. So I'm like, what could his company do, or what could I do, you know, making an impact that would truly cause him to make that conscious decision to pick the right choice, to make the safer choice when it comes to wearing the proper PPE, or using lockout tagout all the way, or having a spotter, like when you're operating a forklift, or like, so just those little decisions, how do you really make an impact on that person's belief system? I'm obsessed with that. I want to really, really impact people. And, you know, the big goal is obviously to prevent all harm from the workplace. Nobody deserves to die on the job, but it's more than just death on the job. There's significant injuries. I worked with a gentleman that burned 40% of his body. Oof. And that is so tough. And looking back, I'm with any incident, it's like, what could the company have done? What could the culture have done? What could the owner have done? What could the supervisors, the co-workers, that day? I remember that day like it was yesterday. And I remember getting the call, and I remember the call to his parents, and, you know, talking with that person. And that person said, you know, I knew what I was doing was wrong. And that's a lot of the cases. That's like 99% of the time, no matter how significant the injury. Obviously, when we're able to really talk with the person, they knew. I first thought, oh my gosh, these people just don't know. They don't know that they're going to be hurt. They don't know that they're putting themselves in this line of fire where they could potentially kill themselves. It's like everyone we talked to said, I was being dumb. I was being stupid. I was just being a kid, or I was just not even being a kid. I was checked out that day, or I knew the risk. I had done it so many times that I just didn't think anything would happen. So it is, since that is so common, it's that belief system. And I believe better training, the tools that we're going to, invent and invest in, they're going to impact that belief system. It'll make it easier, but it's ultimately, how do we impact that belief system to not take that risk? I'm obsessed with it.
That's
I think
awesome.
I always will be. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
It's crazy. It's a lot to think of. That's deep. I went
Yeah.
deep on you.
No, I'm glad you did. Glad you went there.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well,
Episode one.
Episode one. Sharing your story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this, there'll be a part 2 and then probably a part 3 at some point.
Yay.
But yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Awesome. Yeah. Everyone, thank you for listening. If you have questions, comments, message us. This will be on different platforms, so you know how to find us. So Apolonia Rockwell at all social media, and so you can also go to True Safety Services, our website too. But I appreciate it, guys.